I will say welcome to everybody that's here. Thank you for attending our Minority and Women-Owned Business Certification Seminar. We have some really good speakers this morning. We have 3 of them. So we're very pleased that they would take the time to join us. Minority and Women owned business certification has been a priority for the Chamber, and we've guided and helped many businesses through the process, and it's always great once they're there, because it is a bit of a process. So getting from beginning to end and you know is always quite an achievement, but it opens a lot of doors and opportunities to MWBEs, and we're happy whenever we can help them. Let's see, a little housekeeping first. If everyone would try to keep their microphones muted while we're listening to the speakers, that would be appreciated. If we'll save our questions for the end, and maybe you can put them in the chat box as we're going, and that way it'll kind of keep a running tab of your questions, and then you can ask them also in the chat box live when we get to the end. And then if it works out okay and we seem like we finished up, we may be able to ask some live ones if anyone wants to come on the screen. But please just put your questions in the chat room, and we'll chat box, and we'll try to take them one at a time and try to consolidate as many as we can. I'd like to introduce next our speakers. In the order that they're going in, but I'll read a short little description about who each person is. First, Jennifer Talarico is the Business Opportunity Specialist with the U.S. Small Business Administration Buffalo District Office. She's been with the SBA for over 20 years and has worked in the offices of disaster assistance, government contracting, and field operations. In her current role, she assists local small businesses in all areas of federal contracting, including small business certifications. We also have with us Ryan Smith, who's the Director of Business Development for the Division of Minority and Women's Business Development at Empire State Development. It's a lot of development there. Ryan is physically located in the Syracuse office, and he works with New York State certified MWBEs in ensuring that they have the information and resources to grow their businesses and ultimately increase their participation in New York State contracting opportunities. We also have with us Vulaj Fitzsimmons, who is the Program Director of the Monroe County Finger Lakes Procurement Technical Assistance Center, PTAC. And she's also the APTAC Region 2 Director. And I'll let you give what all that means. But Anna has over 27 years of experience in marketing, communications, and government contracting, and since 2008, she's been helping small businesses in Monroe County and the surrounding 8-county Finger Lakes region to sell to the government. She served as PTAC Program Director since 2015 and prior as the Business Development Manager. She's got a lot of experience in this field, and under her leadership as Program Director, the MCFL PTAC program assisted small businesses in receiving over $335 million in government contract awards and collaborated with regional partners on hundreds of training programs and outreach events connecting government agency and prime contractor buyers to small businesses. Her efforts have led the PTAC operations to an outstanding DCMA performance rating. So it's a great, and that's just a short bio. She's got a lot more. So she brings a lot of knowledge on what she's going to talk about today. So we're glad to have her as well. Without further ado, keep things moving, I will get right to Jennifer first. And I've already, Jennifer, given you control. I don't know if you want to try it or if you want me to run your show, your presentation.
I just tried to share the screen. It says host disabled participant screen sharing. So if you don't mind putting it up, that'll work.
Will, yes. How's that? Can everyone see it?
Perfect. Oh, and I apologize. I just noticed that I had the date wrong. Apparently I'm trying to move things ahead too quickly. So sorry about that.
Well, that's all right. Better to be ahead than behind, right? So.
Okay, and if I can just get the first slide, please.
Sure thing.
Okay, perfect. Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Jennifer Talarico, and I work for the SBA Buffalo District Office. So I do have quite a few slides for you today, but I'm not going to go into great detail with each one of them. But what I did want to provide to you is some links with additional information. So I'm going to give you kind of the top line overview as far as federal certifications are concerned. And then, of course, you can always get in touch with me if you have any questions. And then, as I said, I did also provide the links to the section of SBA's website that has further information. So the first thing I always like to talk about in terms of certifications is, why do you want to consider a federal certification? And one of the biggest reasons is that the federal government, specifically the SBA, does implement goals for federal agencies. For example, the SBA requests that at least 5% of all prime contracting dollars be awarded to women-owned small businesses. And then you'll see on this slide here an additional 5% to our 8A firms, which is our small disadvantage or our minority certification. Another 3% to HUBZone certified firms, and then 3% to service disabled veteran-owned firms. So one of the reasons you may want to consider these certifications, and any of them that you may be eligible for, would be to get access to these funds that are set aside for these types of socioeconomic certifications. And just an additional note, not only do federal agencies have goals to award prime contracts to these groups, large prime contractors that work within the federal government also have goals to subcontract to these groups. So the certifications can benefit you as both a prime contractor and a subcontractor. So just something I like to note before I get into the specific certifications. So if I can get the next slide, please. You'll see here, our primary certification, of course, being the Small Business Administration, is whether or not you are a small business. So it can get a little bit complicated, but again, just giving you the high level overview, essentially, the federal government assigns a 6-digit code to each type of activity, and we call that a NAICS code. That stands for North American Industry Classification System. So really all that you need to know at this level is that, again, we assign a 6-digit code to every type of activity. And then what the SBA does is we have a table of what we call size standards. And you can get more information by clicking on the link at the top. Essentially, we have a table of size standards. Most size standards are based on revenue, meaning that we're going to look at your average annual revenue for the past 5 years. And if your average annual revenue for the past 5 years is under the amount that's on the table, then you qualify as small for that activity. So an example would be commercial construction, that's what we do a lot of contracts in, especially here locally. So the size standard for commercial construction is 39.5 million. So if your average annual revenue for the past 5 years is under that amount, then you do qualify as small. There are some NAICS codes, such as manufacturing and wholesaling, where it might be based on number of employees, in which case it's going to be the number of employees that you've had over the past 12 months. You'll see on the next slide here, having said all that, we do give you a very easy way to figure that out in 3 steps. So if you click on the link here, you can go to our size standard tool. Essentially, you just have to indicate your NAICS code. And if you don't know it, it takes you to a link to enter a keyword search to get what that NAICS code is. And then the system asks you for either that average annual revenue or number of employees, depending on what it is that you do. And the third step, whether or not you're small. So we make it much easier where you can just kind of go in and get that information. Upwards of 98% of the businesses in the US are small businesses. So chances are that you do in fact qualify as a small business according to federal standards. But that's always your first certification that you're going to look for. Are you a small business? If you are in fact a small business, the federal government does, we talked about those goals a moment ago, the federal government is able to set aside certain opportunities to only be competed by small businesses. So if a contracting officer wants to award a particular contract, they can really reduce the competition by saying, okay, only small businesses can bid on this particular contract. So that's the first certification you're going to kind of think about when you're talking about federal contracting. On the next slide, we're going to talk about our woman-owned small business certification. So we'll talk about the specifics in terms of federal. As with most women-owned certifications, at least 51% of ownership has to be with a woman or women. Also, the women would have to hold the highest ranking officer position, as well as manage daily operations. Something that is unique to the women-owned program. And if anyone has specific questions on this, I'd be happy to talk to you about it. But just so that you know, the women-owned program is the only program in the federal government where contracting officers can only set aside opportunities if the area is either substantially or significantly underrepresented by women. So that is one of the things that is a little bit different with the women-owned program. As I said, I'd be happy to discuss that with anyone. That's the only program where there is that caveat before a contracting officer can choose to set aside an opportunity. One of the things that's also unique to the women-owned certification on the federal end of things is that there is no minimum time in business. So we don't have that requirement. You don't have to worry about getting a waiver for that requirement, anything like that. Our women-owned program doesn't have a time in business requirement. On the next slide, we do have a subset of our women-owned small business certification that we call our economically disadvantaged women-owned small business. So if you are a women-owned small business and you as the person who controls the business, or if it's a number of women, each woman will have to meet these criteria. But if you meet these criteria, you may additionally qualify as an economically disadvantaged women-owned small business. Those criteria are your personal net worth, which is your assets minus your liabilities, has to be less than $750,000. Now, we actually take out any equity that you have in your primary residence, anything you have in a retirement account, as well as the value of your business. So when we're talking about that $750,000, we do make those adjustments. And that is in fact where most people hold their net worth. So there is some flexibility there in terms of the $750,000. Additionally, your income outside of the business on a 3-year average has to be less than $350,000. And lastly, the fair market value of your assets has to be less than $6 million. So in my opinion, quite generous there. So if you're considering the women-owned certification, you may also want to think about whether or not you qualify as an economically disadvantaged women-owned small business. And again, that could open up opportunities to more set-asides if you work within an area that's substantially underrepresented by women. And if anyone's interested, we do have specifics on how you can figure that out. Now, recently, October 15th of 2020, we began taking applications for the women-owned certification. It used to be that it was a self-certification, meaning you as a small business would set up an account and upload your documents and essentially just self-certify. No one at SBA would look at that documentation. But you'll see here on the next slide, we're now taking applications through what we call our Beta Certify system. So Beta Certify, again, you'll see as with all the slides, you'll have a link directly to the system. This is what the homepage looks like. So I wanted to point out a couple of things here. So you will need to create an account in Beta Certify to get your approval as a women-owned small business. Once again, you submit an application and SBA approves it. A couple of things here. You'll see in the bottom left-hand corner where you have the Beta Certified knowledge base. This is going to be so important in helping you work through your application. The Women-Owned Small Business Program has set up all kinds of information in that knowledge base. They have checklists, they have training, they have transcripts of the training as well as recordings of webinars. So all kinds of things to kind of help you out as you process through this application. So that is just the overview of the women-owned certification. The next certification on the next slide that I'd like to talk to you about is our 8A Business Development Program. Now, this is the federal certification that most closely mirrors the state minority certification. A couple of ways that it's different, I'll point out in just a moment, but there are some similarities as well. So essentially what the 8A program does is tries to level the playing field for minority-owned small business firms by giving you specific advantages in terms of both guidance and business development, as well as set aside and sole source contracts. So when we're talking about the contracting aspect, those set aside and sole source contracts are so important. So I do have some separate information to talk about those, but just know that the program is not only a certification, it also is a business development program. On the next slide, you'll see the first set of criteria for eligibility. So if you're familiar with the state minority certification, you'll notice that we have the same designated groups. So if you are a member of one of the minority groups listed here, you automatically qualify for what we call social disadvantage. Now, where we kind of differ from the state minority certification, with the 8A certification, if you don't happen to be a member of one of these minority groups, you may still qualify as socially disadvantaged. What you would have to do is write a narrative explaining how you've been discriminated against in your line of work. Then the 8A program will take that into consideration and make a determination of whether or not you meet the social disadvantage criteria. The most common example of that I see would be perhaps a woman in construction, where not a member of one of the designated minority groups, but can demonstrate that there's been discrimination in their field. The second component you'll see on the next slide is what we call economic disadvantage. Now, this is going to look familiar to you. We just talked about it in terms of economically disadvantaged women-owned. The criteria are exactly the same for the 8A program. So for 8A, you have to meet social disadvantage, which is to be a member of one of the minority groups or explain how you've been discriminated against, and meet economic disadvantage, which, as I said, are the same criteria you saw for women-owned. So you'll see those here on the slide. On the next slide, this is another thing that makes the 8A program unique is the 8A program is the only certification that we have in federal that it is a limited term. So even if you still qualify, you can only be in the 8A program for a total of 9 years. We break it up of your first years 1 through 4 being what we call your developmental years, and years 5 through 9, your transitional. What that means, we're going to talk about 8A sole source opportunities on the next slide, but essentially in years 1 through 4, you can get as many 8A sole source contracts as you like, up to the program limit, which is $100 million. Then in year 5, we start saying, okay, we're going to get you ready for year 9 when you graduate. So every year 5 and on, we say, okay, we want to see a little bit more non-8A. So that's just the way that we work the business development component into the 8A program. So as I mentioned, one of the primary benefits of the 8A from a perspective of contracting is what we call sole source contracts. So if you are a certified 8A firm, you can obtain a sole source contract for up to $4.5 million or $7.5 million for manufacturing and wholesaling. What that means, and this again is unique to the 8A program, while you can do sole source in other socioeconomic categories like the women-owned or the hub zone, 8A is the only program where you can do it with no justification. So if you're an 8A certified firm and you go out and market to the Army Corps of Engineers in Buffalo and they say, great, we'd like to give you this opportunity, they can essentially award you the contract with zero competition and not have to justify it further than the fact that you're an 8A certified firm. So this is one of the primary benefits from a contracting perspective, are these sole source opportunities. You'll also notice on the next slide, if there is an opportunity that exceeds the $4.5 million or the $7.5 million, it can still stay in the 8A program, meaning you're only going to compete against other 8A firms, but that just allows for those higher amounts, those bigger contracts. I've actually seen 8A competitive awards for up to $100 million. These can be huge contracts, sometimes with multiple contractors being awarded, but just know from a contracting perspective, these are the real benefits of the 8A program. Of course, you want to consider the business development component and working with your assigned person within the SBA to help you along. But from a purely contracting perspective, the sole source and the competitive awards are a huge advantage to you as an 8A certified firm. The next slide is Hub Zone. Okay, so that wraps up our 8A portion. And again, I know I'm kind of zooming through these, but I just wanted to make sure that I covered all of our certifications. In fact, I do have a webinar coming up if anyone's interested at the end of April that focuses just on 8A and Hub Zone. So if you hear something in my brief overview this morning that you'd like to learn more about, I'd be happy to send you an invitation to that particular webinar. But our next certification is Hub Zone, which stands for Historically Underutilized Business Zone. So that is generally going to be an area of low income or high unemployment, or sometimes both. So what the Hub Zone program seeks to do is to drive economic change to that particular area. And because of that, you'll see on the next slide, the criteria for hub zone is more based on where your business and where your employees reside, as opposed to anything financially for you as the owner. The only eligibility on the owner is that at least 51% of ownership has to be US citizens, or some of the makeups that you see here. But the primary eligibility on hub zone is going to be where you're located. So first thing, your principal office has to be located in a hub zone. Now you can very easily make that determination by going to our hub zone map, which I provided a link. You go to our hub zone map and you type in your address. It tells you whether or not you're in a hub zone, so pretty easy. Secondly, at least 35% of your employees have to reside in a hub zone. So those are the two criteria. Something unique that we here in Buffalo can offer to you if you're potentially interested in hub zone, we can do what's known as a pre-screen, meaning when you apply for the hub zone application, I can sit down with you and go through a checklist. And if you have all of your documentation that's needed to make a decision, we can actually fast track your application. It generally takes about 90 days for a decision on a hub zone application. If we do a fast track, it could be 30 days. I've had them done overnight. I've had them done in a week. It just depends on volume, but most certainly it can fast track you and put you to the front of the line. So definitely something to think about if you're interested in hub zone. So the next slide will actually show you the hub zone map. And again, you can click on the title and that's a link directly to the hub zone map. So if you're thinking, oh, that sounds good, I think I may be interested, here's a way that you can figure out based on where your office is located, as well as your employees are located. And that doesn't have to be the same hub zone, the office and where the employees are, it just has to be a hub zone. Okay, so the next slide just has some additional advantages to the hub zone program. We talked about the fact that contracting officers or agencies can set aside contracts to only be competed by certified firms. So they can set aside contracts to be competed by hub zone firms. Another advantage, and this is unique to hub zone, if you as a small business are bidding on an opportunity that is what we call full and open, meaning anybody can bid on the opportunity, large, small. If you are bidding against a large contractor, your bid can be up to 10% higher than that firm, and you would still win the contract. So it gives you that price preference. Now, just keep in mind that doesn't apply against other small businesses because we don't want to show preference for one certification over another. But if you're bidding against a large firm, you can bid up to 10% higher and still be low bidder. So the next slide is going to talk about our service disabled veteran owned program. You'll see a lot of the same criteria as women owned in terms of ownership and management. At least 51% has to be owned by a service disabled veteran or veterans. Those people also have to be the highest ranking officer and manage daily operations. So sort of the same ownership and control type criteria. And the last thing I just wanted to hit on, I know it's not on the next slide, it's not in particular a certification, but a lot of people have questions about it. And same thing, I do an entirely separate training on just this program. But I just wanted to make a quick mention, is our All Small Mentor Protege program. Essentially what this allows you to do as a small business, you would be the protege. You can team up with a large business. And if you have an approved mentor protege agreement, you as the small business and the large business can come together as a team and both be considered small. So if you are a hub zone certified firm and you have a mentor, say that you get together with MWOB, just to use an example of a prime contractor in our local area. So you as a small business get together with MWOB. You as a team take on the fact that you're small, if you're hub zone certified, if you're women owned. So something to think about. Essentially, this program allows you to get together with a large prime contractor and be in that mentor type relationship where you get whatever it is that you need to be successful in federal contracting. And you do that by gaining experience and working together with your mentor as a team. So again, I know I kind of sped through that, but I wanted to get you all that information on our certifications. Please feel free to ask questions after we're all done presenting, or get in touch with me and have my contact information here. But I really appreciate everyone's time. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Jennifer. We appreciate your being here and all the information.
Thank you.
Now I'd like to introduce Ryan. Let me just get the screen set up here for him. Ryan, oops, hang on a second. My screen went a little wonky on me. There we go. Did you want me to run it for you, or do you want to run your own? Oh, Ryan, I'm not hearing you. Are you on mute by chance?
Oh, sorry about
There
that.
you are.
I had my phone actually on mute.
Oh,
I was just saying it's saying you disabled the sharing capability for participants. So if you want to make me a co-host, or
All right.
if you just want to drive the slides, that's okay as well. So
let's try making you a co-host and see how that works. I just did
Okay.
it. That way you
All
can
right.
self-direct.
Yeah, that looks like it's working.
Okay, cool. There we go.
So, just bear with me 1 second here. Okay, how does that look?
Looks good.
Okay, great. So yeah, no, thanks again for having me. Looking forward to providing a little information on the New York State MWBE certification. There's a lot of information, but what's nice is there are great resources out there to help you if you're interested in applying for the New York State certification. And we'll get to that in just a few minutes. So we'll dive right in here. We're just going to do a brief background. We're going to go over a couple of the benefits. We'll talk about the eligibility criteria as well as the process itself, what it looks like. And then, as I mentioned, we'll highlight a couple of the resources that are available. We always like to start with this particular slide. In December, we have a new executive director and executive vice president, Jerome Duvall. He joined the division in late December. And I'm not going to read the whole welcome letter, but really what we want to highlight is, there's a 30% statewide goal that Governor Cuomo set back in 2014 for MWBEs to participate on state contracting. And in the last full fiscal year, in 2019-2020, the utilization rate for minority and women-owned businesses on state contracts increased to 29.51%. What I like to highlight is what that really equates to in dollar terms. Over $3 billion in state contracts went to MWBE. So if you're already doing business with governments, local governments, or the state, you definitely want to get your certification. Or if you have considered looking into state contracting or local government contracting or federal contracting, it's really important to get those certifications. So we're going to talk about what that entails. So just a background, the Division of Minority and Women's Business Development, our mission is to promote equality of economic opportunities for MWBEs and ultimately to eliminate the barriers that exist to participating on state contracts. We have a few key objectives. We want to encourage and assist state agencies to award a fair share of contracts to MWBEs. In our division, we review the applications by businesses that are seeking certification, and we also maintain a directory of certified MWBEs. Currently, we have over 8,800 certified MWBEs in New York State, and that directory is growing every day. And then also, once you're certified, we want to make sure that we're promoting your business and providing business development for MWBEs through education, outreach, as well as various workshops like this one that we're in today. And again, we do a lot of outreach with the agencies, with our prime contractors, as well as provide a lot of information for our certified firms. So just to talk about a couple of the benefits, a lot of folks, maybe have contemplated getting certified and they ask, I wasn't sure if it's worth it. So just a couple of the benefits, you become part of that directory, a great directory of over 8,800 firms. And this directory is used by private contractors, consultants, government agencies, pretty much anyone that is on a state-funded project or has a procurement or a contract with the state agency that has MWBE goals. So once you're certified, you really can open up a lot of opportunities for your business. We also have access to lending and bonding programs specifically tailored to our certified MWBE firms. Our division also provides tailored procurement and contracting opportunities. We send out notices for opportunities that fit your particular industry or skill set. And then also just being a part of our great network of support and services that we have for MWBEs. We invite business, our certified firms to a lot of our trainings, our workshops, events. We have our Training Tuesday webinars every month, as well as customized technical assistance. Our business development team can sit down with you, learn about your business, and then help you strategize and how you might go about targeting your business to New York State contracting opportunities. Everything I covered today, you can find on our website, which you see the link at the bottom of the screen. So why do we certify? One is just to maintain the integrity of the program and make sure that the bona fide MWBEs are receiving the MWB certification. Ultimately, we just want to make sure we're deterring fraud and abuse, but also we want to make sure that we're tracking participation with the New York State agencies. Again, you can find out a little bit more information on the website. But we also want to highlight a few other resources. Our ESD has multiple divisions. When I say ESD, I'm saying Empire State Development. So we, during the pandemic, we came out with a $100 million relief package or relief fund called the New York Forward Loan Fund. I encourage you to learn more about that if you're looking for low interest loans for your business as we kind of recover and come out of the pandemic. There's also a new initiative for the Empire State Digital Initiative. This is basically helping firms get more, pivot to be a more digital or online business. And then the small business lease assistance as well as NISTAR. All of these are great small business resources. And these are resources that you do not need your MWB certification. We just want to point out that as a small business, Empire State Development has a lot of other great resources for you. So please, learn a little more by visiting those links on the slides. So let's dive right into the eligibility criteria. Basically, under Article 15A of the Executive Law, any for-profit firm that is at least 51% owned, operated, and controlled by citizens or permanent resident aliens who are either a woman or minority is eligible for certification. And then the minority groups who are eligible are Black persons having origins from any of the Black African racial groups, Hispanic persons of Mexican, Puerto Rican, Dominican, Cuban, Central or South American descent, of either Native American or Latin American origin, regardless of race, Asian Pacific persons having origins from the Far East, Southeast Asia, or the Pacific Islands, and then Asian Indian subcontinent persons having origins from the Indian subcontinent, as well as Native American persons having origins in any of the original peoples of North America. So that's, relatively specific. If you have any questions about whether you qualify, you can always reach out to us or our certification unit. My contact information will be on the last slide. But our certification goes above and beyond just being a woman or minority and being 51% owner. It really comes down to the next several eligibility criteria that we require. So the first is ownership, operation, and control. All firms seeking MWBE, WBE, or the both combined MWBE certification must be independently owned, operated, and controlled by minority and woman members. The ownership must be real, substantial, and continuing, and then MWBEs must exercise the authority to independently control the day-to-day business decision. This is really key because we have some, firms in the past that have, applied for certification, but really haven't demonstrated that they have that ultimate day-to-day business decisions authority. Perhaps they're more of an office administration role. So it really comes down to a lot of that authority to make the decisions. What that entails is signing contracts, paychecks, a lot of the documents that go into it. There is quite a few documents that go into the process. Those documents will basically help demonstrate whether you have full ownership, operation, and control. There is a personal net worth restriction. Each minority or woman owner upon which certification is based cannot have a personal net worth exceeding $15 million after allowable deductions. There's a small business restriction. The firm cannot exceed 300 employees. So this is full-time or part-time employees. So how they look at that, they're going to look at the past 4 quarters, the average of the past 4 quarters of your payroll. You also have to be independent, active, and in business for 1 year. The firm must operate independently of other firms, as I mentioned in that first item on top. Must also demonstrate business activity, and generally the business is required to be in operation for at least 1 year. So business activity, you're going to have business taxes, you'll have contracts, you'll have invoices, but also really what it comes down to, you want to show that you've been paid for your services in order to get certified. And then also, I'm not sure if we have any out-of-state applicants here, but just know that if you're an out-of-state applicant, you must first register with the Department of State, and that information is at the bottom of the screen. Essentially, you have to get authority to do business in New York State. If you have any questions about that, the contact information for the Department of State, the Division of Corporations is what you want to be looking at or reaching out to if that applies to you. So getting started, this is where you're going to go if you want to start your New York State certification application. We call it the New York State Contract System. The website's right at the bottom. This is what it looks like. It's pretty straightforward. This is exactly what it looks like. You'll go down about halfway down the page. You'll see MWB certification. You'll either certify or recertify with New York. Just note that if you have been certified in the past, but your certification has lapsed, that's deemed as a new certification application. So if you're currently certified, then you will select recertify. So just keep that in mind. We get some folks that will submit a recertification application, but they haven't been certified for 5 years. That's just going to get rejected, and you'll have to start a new application. So keep that in mind. If you let the certification lapse or you haven't been certified for many years, make sure you're selecting the new certification application, and that's option 1 on the screen. And then again, option 2, if you're currently certified and you're coming up for a recertification, you can select option 2, as well as this is where you're going to select vendor profiles, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. So completing a vendor profile, this is really what the very first step is once you register on the New York State Contract System. Make sure you just take the time to fill out all the information accurately. Don't rush into the application, because really you want to make sure that your business description, all that information is accurate, because it can act as an electronic business card. Some agencies, authorities, as well as prime contractors, will have the ability to look you up, and it may lead to business opportunities. So make sure you don't just gloss over that very first step in the New York State Contract System. And then on an ongoing basis, make sure you are keeping that up to date. Because it's important to recognize that the profile is not the same thing as the certification application. We've had some folks call us, say, oh, I submitted an application, and either they didn't finish the process or they just submitted the profile update, and we have to tell them we are not showing any application on file. So again, keep in mind that the profile is not the same as the application. Once you do a profile, however, you will essentially see this as part of the process. You'll select step 1, which for many, I think, will be your firm has never been certified with New York State. And then as you see at the bottom, step 2, you're going to submit a new MWB certification. And this is what it looks like. What's nice is it really directs you through the process. You can see at the bottom, company profile, and then you're going to go through each of those segments. Again, I think it's pretty relatively straightforward. What's nice is it depends on your business structure, your organizational structure. For example, if you're a sole proprietor, it'll kind of steer you towards those documents that are mandatory for your business or structure. The items on the left of the screen here, these are items that apply for every application. So make sure if it's asking for these that you are actually submitting it. I mentioned proof of business activity. You're going to have to show proof of capitalization. This can be canceled checks or bank statements, purchase agreements, proof of equipment. Sometimes that can be more difficult if you don't have an outright business loan or anything like that. You can show that you purchased computer equipment, for example. Capitalization can also be in the form of expertise. If you've got certain licenses or you have schooling that demonstrates your expertise, you can also submit that as your contribution to the business. And then proof of citizenship and gender, that's pretty self-explanatory. And then I won't read all of them, but just know that all these items on the left will be required. So don't, oftentimes we'll see, for example, the resumes, for example, they think, okay, well, that doesn't apply to me, and they just gloss over it. Unfortunately, the certification unit will end up requesting that information. As I mentioned, depending on the business structure, you're going to have additional documents. So for sole proprietorship, you have your business certificate from the county. LLCs, same. You can have different documents that are applicable to LLCs, and then corporations have their documents that are unique to that business structure. So again, the system's pretty straightforward, and it kind of steers you through the process. Also know that there's a one-step certification application, and we call these a addendum. So what this means is upon certification, if you intend to get certified with one of these organizations, the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, the Erie County and City of Buffalo Joint Certification, or the New York City Small Business Certification, or Department of Small Business Certification, you can select what we call the addendum during your application. And what that means is once you're certified with us, we will also share your application information with these entities. But also note the addendums are for New York-based firms only, except if you're applying for the Port Authority and you're based in New Jersey, they'll accept New Jersey as well as New York. So just a kind of a nice feature. If you intend to get certified with one of these, you can sort of just save yourself a little bit of time and effort in the process. Fast track applications, again, if you are certified with one of the partners that are listed on the screen, Erie County, for example, or if you're already certified with the WeBank, Women's President Education Organization, or any of the other certified DBE program or the federal AA program, you can select, when you start your application, you'll see the option for a fast track application. You have to be already certified with one of these organizations, and your certification must have at least 3 months remaining before the expiration. So just know that if you're already certified with one of these, you can select the fast track application. I would like to say, though, the name's a bit of a misnomer. It's not a fast, or I should say it's not an expedited review of your application. Unfortunately, it just reduces the amount of documentation that you have to submit with our application. So keep that in mind. Unfortunately, it's not the greatest name, so it can be a little misleading for some folks. So just know, again, it's just going to save you a little bit of time and documentation. So this is just a nice visual of what the process looks like. This is at the end. You can submit your MWB application if you're complete, or if you're logging back in, you want to view your application, you can also edit your application. Just keep in mind that once it's submitted, no changes can be made. So please ensure that all information is correct and accurate. As I mentioned, make sure all those documents are in order. But what we always recommend is that you have, as you are completing, or once you've submitted all the documents and prior to submission, have somebody take a look at it. We have great partners that can look at your application and make sure you're not missing one of those important documents. That's the biggest reason for a delay in the process. Many times our applications, something like 60% of our applications, have to give additional information. They're missing documents. So do yourself a favor. Visit one of these great resources. We have the Entrepreneurship Assistance Centers. We have the Procurement Technical Assistance Centers. which you're going to talk to Anna, who's, you know, my favorite partners, as well as the small business development centers. All of these resources, as well as the chambers of commerces throughout the state. You know, there's a lot of great organizations out there. Make sure you utilize them. Make sure you take advantage of these. You know, these services are free. Many of them can review your documents to make sure you have everything in order, and make sure that your submission is complete. So my contact information, the certification unit, you can reach out directly to them, but my information is on the screen as well. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it off back to Scott, and let's see here.
I think I can just.
Scott, I don't know if you can take, oh, here we go. I got it. There we go.
You got it. There you go. All right. Great. Thank you, Ryan. I am going to turn it over to Anna now. And it was great. That was a good segue, Ryan. So thank you for that for her. Does she have, you've got control, right, Anna? Looks like it. Things are happening.
I do have control.
Excellent. Wonderful, right? Feels good.
That was a perfect segue. Thanks, Ryan. Okay, let me just start my slideshow. So good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us as we're on the tail end of International Women's Month. Glad you could be here. A lot of great information from our partners from the SBA and New York State Empire State Development. And you're hearing a lot of acronyms. So I'll just take a deep breath, and my words of wisdom to you right now are, don't worry about all the acronyms if you're not familiar with them. This is something that we can explain to you in a one-on-one when you reach out to any one of us. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the PTAC, and then I'm going to take it a step further in terms of what you can do with your certifications, or even if you're not certified in terms in the realm of government contracting. So the PTAC helps businesses sell to the government. Here's my contact info. When I'm done, I'll pop it in the chat as well, so you have it, but I believe the presentations are going to be shared, so you'll have all this information. A little bit about the PTAC and who we are. I'm going to stop my video. There we go. Can you still see the screen? Hello?
Yep, it looks good.
Okay, so the Procurement Technical Assistance Program was actually started back in the mid-'80s by the Department of Defense to make sure that the government has a good supply of vendors in the pipeline. How do they do that? Well, to increase competition, make sure that they can build things and provide services as needed and not stop any efforts that they have. And over the years, they've come to share us with other federal agencies, as well as states and municipalities. So we're allowed to work with any business. We don't just help small businesses. We also work with large businesses. Any businesses that want to sell to the government, we provide that direct one-on-one government contracting services. We're administered through the Defense Logistics Agency, and we're one of 94 centers nationwide, including the territories of Guam and Puerto Rico, and now the Mariana Islands, which is great. So we are one of 7 PTACs in New York State, and there is a brand new PTAC, covers the Mid-Hudson region there, as well as Albany. Albany finally has a PTAC. They're located in Rome, New York. It's the Ignite U NY PTAC. But as you can see, the Monroe County Finger Lakes PTAC in purple covers the 9-county Finger Lakes region as designated by New York State. If you are in the surrounding counties in blue, you want to contact the Cattaraugus County PTAC. If you don't have that information, just send me an email and I'll connect you with Pat McGlue. He's the new program manager there for that territory. So what do we do? No cost services because of how we're funded through the Department of Defense. Every PTAC has a host agency. My host agency is the County of Monroe Industrial Development Agency. So we're located in Rochester, New York in their offices, but we provide training, workshops and webinars. One day we'll get back to workshops, but webinars such as these. We provide government to business matchmakers where you have an opportunity as a seller to meet with buyers on the government side, whether they be agencies from all different levels or those large government prime contractors, designated large by their NAICS code. And then they also have to do a minimum of government contracting with the government. But the bulk of our work is done on one-on-one counseling, where the first thing we're going to do is sit down with you and assess your business potential to sell to the government. Our assistance includes registrations, certifications, identifying subcontracting opportunities. We'll review solicitations and help you with your preparation. And we also assist with grants that fall under the DoD, Department of Defense purview. And then technical and post-award performance issues. As far as like things like packaging and labeling, we may not be the expert in all of them, but we work closely with the Department of Defense experts that know all this stuff. So we can refer you to the right person. And clarifying any technical information, as I mentioned, we will sit with you. If you're ready to do business with the government, we're going to provide you with a roadmap of who's buying, what you're selling, and then how to proceed. And then one of our most favorite services is our bid match service, where we pay for it out of our budget for our clients, where you receive daily email notifications of potential bids that match what it is, what you're doing. We take keywords from you, plug it in the system, and there you have it. I like to think of it as a living document. We make those changes on an as needed basis. Okay. So first thing I wanted to point out, because there's a lot of talk about certifications and registrations, they're not the same. They're very different. There's a complete difference between registrations and certifications. So I kind of made this eye chart. You have federal, state, and then you have what we call those large prime contractors and agencies. So on the federal side, it's a little different. If you want to do any of those registrations, certifications, excuse me, that Jennifer mentioned, you have to be in SAM, the System for Award Management. If you're a manufacturer, you have a whole lot of other hoops to jump in through, unfortunately, but that's largely due to the fact that you will be accessing drawings that may be critical items. So there's a lot of other protection going on right now, especially with cybersecurity. So this again is just a little eye chart. Ryan and Michelle and and Jennifer have talked thoroughly about the different certifications that are available. And yes, we do provide assistance with them. But what I wanted to focus on a little more is, okay, you've got these certifications, now what do you do with them? And one of the things you need to understand, and this is an excerpt from the Federal Acquisition Regulation 9.104-1. However, I know that New York State has almost the identical law as well, and how they determine how those buyers, those government contracting officers, how they determine whether or not you're a responsible and prospective contractor. Yes, there are set-asides and things of that nature, but I won't read through the whole thing. I'll leave that to you. But what I really wanted to point out is that you have a satisfactory performance record, in addition to the ability to completely comply and complete the project or the contract on time and within budget. Very important. Government has systems where they track delivery and performance. And so past performance becomes a really important item once you start doing business with the government. And it's also important before you start, and you're going to say, well, geez, how do I prove that? Well, they will take into account on times your commercial records as well. So what I want to highlight is what is that strategy that we're going to talk to you about in terms of winning bids, and what are some of those key things you need to know? It's a lot of information. You can go down many, many different paths. You can go down the path where, okay, after I've researched who's buying what I'm selling, I'm only going to sell directly to that large construction firm who's doing business then with the prime contractor, with the government. So I'm going to be their sub. Or, maybe I'm going to sell directly to Defense Logistics Agency because they have some components that I can provide to them that are made in the USA, things like that. So that marketing preparation and the government technical marketing plan, we're going to research government spending and contract history, how to communicate with those targeted agencies and prime contractors. Because the fact of the matter is, being registered and being certified isn't enough for them to necessarily know about you, okay? How to network and use those networking opportunities at procurement meet and greets, and making sure that you take advantage of those. And then making sure that you're bidding on opportunities that fit your capabilities. And so, you know, honestly, it's really hard for me. I just had an experience this past week, a couple weeks. I've been working with someone who was bidding on a contract that was way out of scope for what their past performance demonstrated. And what do I mean by that? So say your largest contract that you have performed under, whether it's commercial or government, is $50,000, and you want to bid on a $2 million contract. Most likely, they're not going to consider you unless something has really fundamentally changed in terms of the equipment that you have purchased and how you've expanded your staff to ensure that you can comply and meet the terms and conditions of the contract, meaning you're going to complete it on time and you're going to deliver on time. So usually what you want to do is you're going to start step by step. So if my largest contract as a woman-owned business has been $50,000, I'm going to bid on a $100,000 contract that's similar in size and scope, okay? Similar in size and scope. These things are really important to know. The other thing that we're going to look at, and my goal is really to teach you how to fish, okay? So I'm going to show you the different systems where you could do your research on who bought, who sold what. So those spending patterns, who's currently buying, how are they buying? Is it centralized or decentralized? Are they purchasing under government vehicles? For instance, both the federal government and New York State have large 5-year contracting purchasing vehicles. So you have to be aware of timing of when you're going to sell, or how can you get in as a sub to one of those large contracting vehicles to somebody who's actually on it. And then how to find out who to speak with. So great, you have all this information. Now what do you do with it? Who are those small business contacts? And what are those procurement forecasts? Who's got money in the budget to buy what you sell? So I'm not trying to scare you. This is a long game. Patience and perseverance is our mantra. And you know, you just have to be prepared to look at it that way in order for it to be the most successful. So one of the other important things that we're going to do with you is help you develop a government capability statement. Basically, it's your government line card. You're going to use this to hopefully build content on your website, like a government buyers page. Also use this content when you're registering on the vendor pages of agencies at times who have them. So we've talked a lot about certifications. I mentioned how registrations and certifications are different. And I also mentioned that there's federal, state registrations and certifications, but then the separate government agencies and prime contractors may also have their own databases. And so you got to market. Once you jump through all these hoops, it's time to put your sales cap on and make sure that they are able to find you, and you give yourself the best advantage of doing that. You can use this content for email outreach, and also have it for events. I don't foresee us going back to these live government to business matchmakers very soon, but there are virtual ones. We held a very large virtual one back in December. We'll be doing it probably earlier in the fall again this year. And we provide training on that, so don't worry about it. Here's a sample government capabilities statement, kind of talks you through. So a lot of what I do also is review these for small businesses in particular, and I'm happy to do that for anyone that needs to have it looked at. All right, so educating your buyers. Some of this may seem really fundamental, but I run into it almost every day. Make sure, even if you do have a government capabilities statement, that you update it on a regular basis. And you want to treat it like your resume, basically. So one version may work for one company that's in a certain industry, another version may work for another. Please always include your email signature block in your emails. I know sometimes when you hit reply, I know the email system we use doesn't automatically do that, but it's real important. You don't want the people that you're selling to start hunting for your information. you know, that they just might give up. Your website's up to date. Get ready to share all this information with your current and potential buyers. So here's the thing. So maybe you're just newly certified as a federal and state woman-owned business, okay? Do your buyers know that? Because you don't know who currently has a government contract out there, and that may very well pique their interest. So any certification that you have or have newly obtained, you want to make sure that you educate folks in your circle of buyers or potential buyers that you're marketing to. And then, you know, develop that appropriate frequency of contact. Ask them, when can I contact you again? Don't call them every day. Don't call them maybe every week even. So just be aware of that. All right. That was like really quick run through of some strategies that we're going to sit down and discuss with you. You know, understanding the rules, also finding out who's buying what you're selling. And I also wanted to highlight, you know, reading and responding to solicitations. So for this example, I'm using a standard federal contract. New York states are a little different. So it's very important that you understand the contract terms and conditions, regardless of whether you're a small business or a large business. And what does contract compliance mean? That performance and performing well, knowing the key players, understanding those terms and conditions, what you have signed up for. While we at the PTAC will sit with you and review any questions that you have for a contract, the first thing I tell somebody that comes to us is read it 3 more times, highlight where your questions are, and then we'll hash it out. And why do I do that? Not to be mean. I do that because you're the one who's going to be responsible for this contract, and you have to understand the terms and conditions, obviously. So plan to succeed, make sure your plan is on track and communicating that plan and implementing that plan. And of course, there's business ethics and integrity that I'm sure everybody is maintaining. So here's my most favorite government little cartoon where Gilbert talks in the office meeting. We want a huge government contract. Now we need to follow all our company policies plus every government procurement rule. And he says, I feel like I'm being smothered by a damp mattress. And yes, that's what it feels like. So it's going to take practice, you know, to get used to looking at a contract. And in this case, what is the format of a federal contract? And a uniform contract format has a table of contents. So some people, after having so much practice, know exactly where to go, to turn to look to, where to find out. Obviously, you're going to want to know, okay, when's this due? But what are they asking for? What's a performance work statement? And what are some of those clauses I need to be aware of? You know, the only standard in government contracting is that nothing's the same. Don't ever assume that any contract is the same. So here we can see there's broken down in sections under supplies and services plus price and cost. The contract line item will, if it's built in there, will indicate, you know, how many items they're looking for, and then you have to build your pricing around that. And then what type of contract is it? So is it a set aside for an 8A or WOSB? Is it open to small business? Is it a full and open contract? Is it a 5-year, what they call IDIQ, indefinite delivery and indefinite quantity? So there's different types of purchasing vehicles, and how do you determine pricing? And really, you're going to have to demonstrate what your costs are, obviously, like you would with commercial pricing. Then, you know, you're not in business to lose money. Okay, so when you're building your pricing, you know, build a reasonable margin for yourself, but don't undercut yourself either, because if you do and you think, well, this is going to be my way in, I'm going to, you know, lowball, I'm going to lose a little money, this is going to be my loss leader. Well, no, because then they're just going to come back and say, well, we're just going to go with the other guy who's doing the same thing, you know, as long as they think they're qualified. So then section C has your description and specs. Are there any attachments? They'll be there. So like if there's any drawings, if you're manufacturing and so forth. Delivery or performance, what is expected, critical that you know that. Just because a contract may be issued from one location, it doesn't mean that that's where your product or service is expected to be delivered. Let's see, contract clauses, just know on them. And then section J as a performance report statement. So this is just in here for, your edifications, just so you have a general understanding of the uniform contract format and to help you, guide you as you're looking at these types of federal contracts and what those sections mean. Now, you got to know the key players. It's very important. This is really critically important. I know a few businesses have really gotten in trouble over this. And by trouble, I mean they've lost money because they did not get in writing any contract order changes from the contracting officer. Only the contracting officer is warranted to make any changes to your contract. They are the only ones. You may hear, I'm gonna get someone to the room. You may hear, get feedback from a contract specialist, but most likely you're dealing with the contracting officer technical representative, and they may say, you may come across a problem, let's say construction, where the design, the engineering design is just off from what's actually on location. And you may tell them, hey, we're gonna need to do additional work on this. And they say, oh yeah, go ahead and do it. And you're gonna be like, no, not until you get it in writing from the contracting officer. Absolutely not. Because things happen, contracting officers rotate quite a bit. They may be actually active duty folks in the federal side of things. So you want to make sure you get that. And then of course, you always rely on your small business specialists. So they're your advocates. So the SBA is there for you to provide any assistance, problems. So in summary, all government agencies and prime contractors, what are they looking for? They want reliable, responsible, and responsive vendors. They're looking for best value. Don't confuse best value with the cheapest price. Now, there are many contracts out there under a certain threshold where they are just looking for cheapest price, but some of those larger contracts, they want best value. So they literally have two different teams that are reviewing your cost proposal versus your actual performance work statement. So, and they're seeking the least risk. Okay, they're risk averse. And what are they looking for? They're looking for innovation. Okay, somehow, if you want to bump out the incumbent coming up, and the incumbent has been on target with pricing, on target with delivery and performance, how are you going to bump them out? You have to really know who your competitors are and what are those innovative items that you can provide the buyer that's going to really lift up another level in terms of, whether they're going to save money or you're talking a brand new widget. So do your research, know your customer, register to get your name out, make sure you get those certifications if they're applicable. Prepare and incorporate a government marketing plan into your marketing plan and have a business plan. It's not, I know that's not on there, but really, really, really have a business plan. And why is it critical? For many reasons. But first, I'm going to plug SCORE, who does a great job with assisting with business plans. And they do it for free. And they have a great sample online that walks you through step by step. But you're going to need that business plan to go to the bank to request more funding when you land that other large contract where you're going to require a bridge loan for maybe a month or two, because of however the payment structure is. So make sure you have a working business plan. And it's always evolving, always changing. And then track your time and budget to determine is this the best investment for you. So we can also talk to you about how do you think about this internally? Whether you're a one-woman show or whether you have, a somewhat larger staff, how are you going to manage all this internally? Which will be good. So here are my bidding on government contracts, 10 tips. Connect with your local PTAC counselor and only bid on what you can deliver. Know that your past performance matters. See number 2. Because you're going to only bid on what you can deliver. Know your competitors, stand out, start small. Our mantra that this is the long game, patience and perseverance. Do your homework, which we're going to guide you through. Know where and how buyers purchase products and services. Pay attention to changing regulations, and don't put all your eggs in one basket. You shouldn't just be doing business with the government directly. Things change. We all know that. And if you lose, don't get mad, get educated. What do I mean by that? So one of my most, or if not still my most successful small business that I've ever worked with here at the PTAC, and I've been here 12 years. It was a company that for initially, when I met them, the two partners, one of the partners just wanted to protest. We should have won this contract. Why didn't we win this contract? And then the other one, who was the president of the company, wasn't really sure. So I had a direct conversation. I said, okay, you can ask for a debrief. First ask for a debrief, see what you can do better. But if these guys wanted to also bid on the same contracts with the folks that they were protesting, I mean, come on, folks, there's human factor, right? So, you could either focus on the negative or focus on how you can be better and do better on your next proposal. And they did. That's what they chose to do. And they've had millions and millions of dollars in government contracts. So they're doing very well. All right, a few things you need to know. So this is real important. You need to be registered in System for Award Management. If you want to do bid on any government contract that's out there, federal government contract, and if I'm not mistaken, New York State, ESD, DMWBD, when you submit, that's a lot of acronyms. So that's the folks that oversee the Women's Business Enterprise, New York State Women's Business Enterprise certification. They all get a little bit of information from the System for Award Management. So again, if you want to bid on a federal contract and get paid, you have to be in here beforehand. It functions really has two primary functions. That is establishing electronic funds transfer between you and the federal government. And the second one is you are acknowledging the standard federal acquisition regulations that apply to every federal contract that's out there. There may be more in the contract, but these are the standard ones. So anyway, right now, there's two systems. There's a SAM.gov, there's a Beta SAM, and Beta SAM will eventually incorporate 10 online websites, will be merged into one. They've already got several in there. And come May 21st, SAM.gov and Beta SAM will be one. That means there will be no more beta.sam.gov. It'll just be SAM.gov, and it'll include your registration in SAM, as well as where you can find federal solicitations and reports on procurement, wage and labor, and past performance, as well as grants. You can find grant information in there. Okay. So, other important information. By 2025, all Department of Defense contracts will contain cyber control regulations. And what the DoD does follows with other agencies. So right now, the cybersecurity maturity model certification is really important in order to safeguard really our military and all those drawings that are out there. I didn't put the slide in here that shows a comparison between two fighter jets, one from the US and one from China, and how China has basically, by getting information from, through cyber, by getting information through all the small businesses and piecemealing together all the little components that they're making, they're eating our lunch. Okay, so cyber controls are really important. And so manufacturers in particular, I created this three-legged stool. There are three critical categories in order to have drawings, and they are having a form DD2345 for unrestricted drawings that used to be unclassified drawings, excuse me, that the military only wants Canadian companies and US-owned companies to have access to. There's cyber controls, and then there's Department of State has ITAR, International Traffic in Arms regulations, where, again, if you're a manufacturer, in order for you to operate in the DoD space, these three things are going to be critical for you to have up to date. And so knowing full well, knowing full well that a small business needs assistance, the DoD has funded a program and supported initiative called Project Spectrum that provides free assistance right now, but the PTAC can also assist you in all these areas and get you going, and you're going to see a lot more focus on this coming along. What else do you need to know? Limitations on subcontracting. And I think, I can't remember, Jennifer, if you highlighted this or not, but if you're a woman-owned small business and you think you're just gonna pass through, have some other business, a large business, do all the work for you, you can't do that anymore. They've closed the loophole, okay? So, you know, there's a couple other details, but I strongly suggest that you read limitations on subcontracting. You can subcontract to similarly situated companies. And then in terms of percentage of services, you can subcontract to that are not similarly situated, but know that things have been clamped down. And then I would always strongly encourage you to read the SBA's affiliation rules. If as you're trying to determine prior to certification, whether or not you're truly a small business, and what do I mean by that? Well, they're going to review what other affiliations that you or maybe your spouse have with other companies and look at your finances. So it's a deep dive. So this is a good way to help preempt a rejection and know upfront what it is that you're dealing with in terms of size and affiliation with other companies you may be involved with. So we have some upcoming training webinars. I'm actually performing on one with Fuse Hub, which is a statewide manufacturing extension partnership. I can get you that link if you're interested. They also have a grant from the DoD to provide some training on cyber directly. And then on April 29th, my PTAC, along with several other PTACs throughout New York State, are hosting the U.S. General Services Administration that will be providing changes to their schedules that you can get on. This is one of those vehicles that I was talking about. New York State and the federal government have vehicles where you can be on for 5 years as a vendor, pre-approved vendor. Well, there used to be multiple federal schedules, and now they've all consolidated them into one giant schedule. So we all want to understand that. So thank you. Here's my phone number, contact information, my email. Let me take a look at the chat here real quick. I don't know if there's anything I need to answer. So, or do we, I guess I'll turn it over to, back over to our hosts, and then they can ask any questions. Oh, excuse me. So Scott, do you have control?
I think I do. I feel like I do. As little as control as I normally have, right? Thank you very much for all that. That's a lot of information. And
it is a lot to unpack, but I guess the message is there's help. There really is. There's assistance. There's no fees for you. So just call us.
Excellent. And what a great resource. We were going to have another person on our panel today that wasn't able to stop by, but sent some points that I wanted to share. And it was a perspective from a local person from the Sheldon area. She owns a information resource business, and she's been minority women-owned certified for over 10 years. And she just wanted to give a few tips or at least observations that she says it's a wonderful opportunity. It's complicated, but that she strongly recommends sticking to the process. She says it's very thorough with lots of forms to complete and documentation to provide, which I think we all saw today. But she says it's worth it because at the end of it, you have a really valuable set of details for your own perspective for your business, where you stand, and every 3 years or when you recertify, it makes it a whole lot easier, and you have some benchmarks that you're able to review. Be patient, be patient, be patient, that the process takes time. But again, it's worth it. And she's been very impressed and enjoys the networks that she's built as a result of it. And then once in there, to be cautious about, she recently had, she communicated with me about a situation where somebody cold called her out of the New York City area as a subcontract. And she had to do some real due diligence to make sure that it was a legit ask. And she says, you know, the takeaway is that the participation in a potential contract award is a great advantage to the bidder, and expect to be treated professionally with all the requests for details satisfied. And if you ever feel like something's held back or missing, reconsider becoming involved. So that was a cautionary tale, because she's done a lot of work with school districts and with government agencies and grant writing. And this was one that she had never experienced. And she contacted us and we did some research, and then she actually contacted the procurement officer. And it was legit, but then the person that was asking about it just disappeared. So I think her suspicion was warranted. But I think now we can take some questions or cover some questions. I know that Ryan, you were answering some in the middle, and as was Anna. I know, just to cover a couple that you did, and you can re-answer quick if people didn't see them, that about reciprocity in other states for certification. Like if you have one in New York, are you certified, or does that count other places? And you answered that, but maybe you can touch on it quick.
Yeah, no, that's a common question, because, you know, there are quite a few certifications out there. Unfortunately, there is not reciprocity, and really it just comes down to, even though a lot of the criteria, they look similar on the surface, our program is based on Article 15A of the Executive Law, and it has specific rules and regulations that are, you know, are part of that. So for that reason, at least, you know, for New York State not having reciprocity with neighboring states or other, you know, certifications, that's really, it comes down to that, you know, being tied specifically to that executive law.
New York State really does a good job with due diligence in terms of making sure that there is true ownership and control, and that those that do qualify are getting, it's fair for them. So I know right now the federal government has just decided to move from self-certification of a woman-owned small business certification to an actual certification module. However, I think there's a ways to go before there could be reciprocity with that. I know that their 8A program, I believe, Ryan, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, as well as, yeah, the 8A and the VA's federal certification can be fast tracked. It doesn't mean you're still not submitting information, but part of it is you submit the application that you submitted for 8A, as well if you're a vet for service disabled veteran owned businesses, and then there's a little less documentation there in terms of follow-up because it's included in the package.
Great.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
One of the questions, and this is very applicable to Wyoming County with the number of dairy farms that we have, but it's a good question generally, is among the 8,800 certified businesses, can you give an idea of the variety of businesses that are certified, and are there any dairy farms in it? And we'll maybe extend that out to farms and agribusinesses.
So that's
yeah, no, that's a great. Oh, sorry, Anna, go ahead.
You go first.
Sorry about that. No, that's a great question. I mean, if you look at the variety of businesses, and really, if you think about New York State, it's a little bit different than, I would say, some of the municipal certifications, whereas most of their are directed towards the public works. New York State, if you think about what New York State buys and the amount it buys, it's anything from professional services to commodities to technology. Really, it seems like everything under the sun. So I love that question, because food and beverage is actually one of our underutilized areas. You know, we even though we have some firms that are in the food and beverage area or the commodities area, you know, for different reasons, there's not a lot of, or I'd say they're underutilized. So we're always looking to increase the number of firms in those categories, but also trying to help and really connect them to opportunities. So I would welcome the opportunity to talk to Jill about her business or anyone else in the dairy or agricultural business, because I think, you know, quite frankly, there are not a lot of firms certified in New York State. I can dig into the directory, but that may actually be a good opportunity if you're not certified. You know, and again, you can work with our business development team to kind of strategize on how to sort of start targeting your business.
So what I was going to say is that in May, the PTAC and the SBA, and I'm sure Ryan will invite you as well, we're planning an industry day that's focused on food and agriculture and as it relates to government contracting specifically. So it's part 3 of our series. We've tackled manufacturing, we've tackled construction, now we're doing food and ag. And so, but back to the actual question, yeah, the government buys everything, the federal government. And think about it, they don't make anything. And if it's not the federal government directly, it's those large government prime contractors. So certainly we've already, as a PTAC, have gotten a ton of farmers registered in SAM for multiple reasons, whether it was that they were getting equipment updates from working with the USDA or doing some other type of work with the government as it relates to what they were growing. So yeah, absolutely. We're happy to talk to you about any needs that you're looking for.
And a couple things that yes, to the several questions that the presentations will be mailed out because there was a lot in there. So we will make sure everyone that attended or signed up will get a copy of your presentations. But you mentioned that there's different events coming up. Is there a mailing list that they could contact you for to get on to make sure that they don't miss any opportunities that might be available?
Yeah, so absolutely, Scott. So I think you said you would be able to share the list with the attendee list with us.
Mm-hmm.
We will get that into our mailing list system, and
Okay.
you will most certainly be notified of any and all upcoming PTAC training. And
Yeah,
events.
and I know it works because I get them almost daily. You send out quite a few emails, but it's always got, you know, the different things that are coming up or workshops or events or trainings or whatever it is, that there's a lot going on. So it's worth getting and paying attention to. I know I saw a question and I know the answer to this one because we've run across it, but if you have to stop in the middle of an application, is it easy to stop, save your work, and then restart or keep on going? And I know, Ryan, that's probably for you. I know I worked with a business and literally we got everything ready, saved in folders and everything on the desktop. And then it came in at different days and we uploaded things separately. So, but maybe you can talk about that.
Yeah, no, that's a great question because, you know, there is a lot of documents. So you know, our New York State certification application, once you start it, you have 90 days to complete it. However, if you come up to, you know, towards the end of that 90-day period, you still need more time. There's a way to extend. You can basically request an extension and essentially it automatically gives you another week. So you can do that up to 12 times. So in addition to the 90 days, you can get 12 weeks extended if you need that amount of time. We recognize, you know, life happens and even if you get to the end of your 12 weeks, even if you needed, you know, additional time, which we don't get that too often, but you can email and contact us. We don't want you to get kicked out of the system, but just know that if you don't do the extension and you pass the 90 days, you lose everything in there. So you have to start completely from scratch. So, you know, definitely work with our partners to help you through the process. But just know that you can extend it. If you need any assistance, you can always, you know, reach out to us. And, you know, we want to make sure that, you know, you have the time that you need.
Yeah, and again, from experience, we did that and helped a business because, you know, sometimes you think you had everything and you're right in the middle of it and go, oh shoot. Yeah. And is there also a process too that while people are applying or once the application's in, when you might have more questions, is the portal the place where those questions get uploaded and answered potentially? Like if you need another document, is that where it goes into, or is there because that portal stays alive?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Yeah, that's really the safest and quickest way. to submit, typically it's, okay, can you give us your most recent year's taxes or, additional information, that'll be submitted via the portal. We've had some instances, for example, if the file is too large and for some reason they can't quite get it through, then the certification unit will say, okay, just email it to us and we'll get it in the system for you. But generally speaking, you can upload everything directly in the portal. It makes it a little quicker and easier.
I will say, and I appreciate you asking that question, Scott, and maybe you've run across it as well, where I've had small businesses say, oh my gosh, I didn't know I had to check in their messages or that they were requesting additional information. So words of wisdom, make sure the email is correct and that you check it regularly, the one that you use for your certification process. And go in once you've submitted, I would say, if not weekly, every couple of days, once you've submitted, check that portal. There may be a pending wait, but once they've accepted your application, make sure they're not requesting additional questions and you don't miss out and then have to restart the clock. So.
Right. Another one, and we hear this one often, is there a good place to look for available contracts? And how do you really determine, so if this is, worth it for your business to get into? Is there a
So the PTAC really, what we're going to do is we're going to sit down with you and figure out who's buying what you're selling. And then really it's a business decision for you to decide whether or not you want to pursue, whether, once we describe to you what it's going to take, everybody's different. And then we do have our bid match service, which helps greatly because it scrapes over 4,000 different sites that are out there, all the way from international, military, federal, state, municipal. Now, we will send you those notifications on a daily basis. So like with Contract Reporter, New York State Contract Reporter, it'll search those, but you'll have to create a free login for that, which is fine. I know a lot of municipalities have switched over to BidNet. Again, it's going to notify you that it's on BidNet, but you'll have to create a login for BidNet as well. But, and this can be changed at any time in terms of the keywords that we put in the system for you. So yeah, that's a free bid match service. I'd say that's a great place to start before paying lots of money, for something you're not maybe sure of.
There's even some local, you have to hunt around.
Can't hear you, Scott.
You have to hunt around a little bit for some too, like Wyoming County. If you go on their website, there's a place where you can actually sign up if bids come out. I think Livingston County. So even in our area that, it's county by county, but, there are resources and sources of that information.
Scott, that gets to that vendor registration that I mentioned. So you've got your certifications and you've got your regular registrations, but everybody else has their own databases as well. So you want to go to the Wyoming County Chamber Purchasing Department to see if they have one. Livingston has one. Monroe County has one. You want to get your name out there and into as many systems as possible. And here's the thing you're going to run into. You need a system for tracking that because some systems maybe only keep you in for 1 year. And then in order to refresh and make sure that information's up to date, it may get purged. So you want to know that. Maybe just keep a simple Excel spreadsheet that indicates the time that you registered and when it's going to expire. So it's a great job for an intern.
Yeah, there you go. Another question we had was the term for women-owned certification. How long does that last before you have to recertify? I know you said it, but we'll double check.
Actually, it's funny. I think I normally do it. I may have skipped over that for today for some reason. But what's nice is the certification used to only be good for 3 years. A year ago, this past January, the reauthorization of Article 15A extended that. So now the New York State MWBE certification is good for 5 years, which is nice.
Yeah, that is a lot better. Considering the amount of work that goes into it,
Exactly.
That's great. That's really nice. Well, it doesn't look like we have any other questions that have popped up. If there are, I'll pause here just a second or slow down just a second to make sure, if there's anybody that they want to quick throw something out there. But
so Scott, I think I'll add to something. I mentioned in the chat a couple of sources, and for New York State, obviously the main source is the Contract Reporter, which Anna just mentioned. One of the questions we often get is how do they connect with the large companies, the prime contractors that are on these contracts? And it can be difficult, but really that's each New York State agency has its own MWBE program. So if you look at whether you're looking at OGS's centralized contracts, and I provided the link in the chat box, as well as Open Book New York, you can learn who's on these contracts. So for example, if you're in food and beverage, if it's a Cisco's of the world or some of the larger distributors, it can be challenging connecting with these folks, but that's why as a certified firm, you'll have access to all the New York State agency MWBE liaisons, and my business development team can help you make those connections. So that's sort of one of the benefits of getting certified. You kind of get in the door of, having that resource at each of the agencies, and those agencies have a vested interest to try to help you and try to increase their utilization on those, on their contracts. So I just want to mention those different sites as well. It's definitely a challenge. Government contracting is not easy, but again, with all the resources available as well as our team, we'll do our best to, help you make those connections.
Great, thanks. Well, I think that wraps it up for today. Anna, did you have anything else? Good?
That's it.
Okay, excellent. Well, you gave a lot of information, Ryan, Jennifer, and Anna, and we appreciate you taking so much time this morning to give it and to take questions. We really appreciate, helping our business community out across the state, but specifically helping us out here today with all this information. Again, we will share the PowerPoints and the email information so that there can be some back and forth exchange, and you can get in touch with these folks if you have any more specific questions. But with that, we just want to thank you once again. Thanks to the staff here at the Chamber for getting it together, Kelly for help managing the chat, everybody for making it happen, and thanks for everybody that tuned in this morning. So thank you and enjoy this beautiful day.
It is. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Thank you.